What is going on, everybody? Member stream time. I know I'm a couple minutes late here, but it's been a day, man. It has been a day. I'd be lying if I said I've been extremely productive, but this Dynasty auction, dude, it's messing me up. It's messing up my brain. Just about to pull up the recent action and check it out. We got Austin in here. Says, hope it's been a productive day. It has not really been. I got like 2 team breakdowns done. Didn't get nearly enough done on the video script. I did record a video with Adam from South Harmon. He's also on the BDGE Dynasty channel. So I recorded a video with him for his South Harmon channel. We talked about some trades and stuff. It was cool. He reached out to me the other day. Said some nice things about the channel, and we had a good time. It was cool getting to know him. Let's see. That one, Candy Bar says, since Yella isn't here, I can push the neighbor's agenda. I mean, feel free, man. I've been rising on him. Tell you the truth, since Yella's not here, I can totally understand the case for neighbors at wide receiver 3. It's super reasonable case. But yeah, man, I'm not moving him right now. Austin, I don't understand how you could bid for BTJ. I feel like you don't have any money. You spent over $550 on Bowers and Chase, or over $500 on Bowers and Chase. Then you traded away 25 in the Genty trade. You traded away 90 more and then 65 more. Like, what do you have left? Like $200? I don't even know how you're going to fill out a roster if you go and bid for BTJ. It's going to be like all $1 players. Lee says, grind, don't stop. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Austin, this is unkind, but I don't agree with that. I mean, to be honest, I haven't watched like a ton of his stuff, and I can't speak to his player take specifically. But I mean, we had a good conversation, I think, about strategy, and I thought he raised some pretty good points about things like wins above replacement and I don't know, kind of the practical boots on the ground stuff when it comes to actually managing a team, dealing with positional value and scarcity and stuff. I think he's pretty sharp. Ross says, can you comment on how excellent my bids have been on all the players you like? Yeah, so I'll jump into some of the auction stuff here. I got to catch up on it a little bit. Just give me a second. I gotta send my wife a text. Our son is supposed to be asleep. He was asleep, and now he's awake. I don't know why. All right. Austin, technically you do have to fill out a roster. Like it'll only let you trade so much cash that you have at least $1 left for every remaining roster spot so that you can roster enough players. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, obviously you are tanking, which is fine. I think what you're doing makes some sense. Honestly, I don't really love what I'm doing right now. I feel like when you just kind of sit in the middle and like don't do anything aggressive, usually it doesn't pan out well, and I haven't really been able to pull the trigger on anything. The one thing I regret, honestly, is not bidding up Caleb Williams a little bit. Like I probably could have taken him to like 185 or so, just looking at where Drake May is right now, who I might bid on again, to be honest with you, but he's at 190 right now. So, the quarterbacks are getting pushed up. Like I thought I could maybe sneak Geno Smith through. He's up to over $40. Obviously, Lamar is crazy expensive. So, I thought I was going to get Kyler through, and then we got that last minute bid on Kyler. So I don't love where things have gone with the quarterbacks. And like I said, I do kind of wish that I had kept a bid in for Caleb, maybe like 180, 185. I don't know. I guess I was just misjudging like where the market was going to go after. For what it's worth, I did set up values for all of the players. I just took the base firsts. I took base firsts, and then I kind of divided the total base first by the amount of cash available and created some rough values that way. I know that was the idea. For from Jacob in the Dynasty Points pod. But for what it's worth, Caleb actually came out to 169 in mine. So 180 would have been over that, which is fine because they're just ballpark values anyway. But again, I got a little bit skeptical or hesitant there. Austin, he said when I traded DK for Herbert in season, I lost it badly. Metcalf for Herbert in a Superflex league? I feel like that doesn't make a lot of sense. Thomas, our mentor. Welcome to the stream, buddy. Realistically, how productive do you expect Genty, Hampton, Caleb Henderson, RJ, and Judkins to be this year? I mean, honestly, I'm not an expert as far as the seasonal projections. I like to look at things like underdog ADP, redraft ADP when it becomes available, that kind of thing. So, yeah, when it comes to that in particular, Genty is a first-round pick on underdog. I think that's totally warranted. Like, he's going to get... It's pretty straightforward that he's just going to get, like, 350-plus touches this year. The other guys are a little bit harder to parse through. I think Hampton, most likely path for Hampton is that he is splitting some work with Najee early in the season. He's more of like a low-end RB2 type, and I think quickly that will change over the first several weeks, month or 2 months of the season. And I think down the stretch, he's got as good a chance as anybody to be putting up like mid RB1 type of numbers. Henderson, kind of dependent on how productive the Patriots offense can be. But I think he has I think he's going to have a pretty solid PPR floor because I think he's going to play a lot of passing downs and get a lot of schemed touches. Not too sure if he can flirt with that RB1 type of production as a rookie, but mid to high end RB2 is totally doable. Same for Harvey, pretty much. I think he maybe has a little bit of a higher immediate ceiling just because the Broncos offense is going to be pretty friendly to running backs. Probably going to score more points than the Pats. Caleb, Judkins, those are more your early down bruisers. They're on offenses that I don't expect to be particularly good. And so those are two guys. Part of the reason I was kind of fading them a little bit in rookie drafts is just that I don't really see them as high scorers this year. Maybe in the future. Judkins especially, I'm sure we'll get a lot of touches in general, but they're not going to be high value touches, I don't think. So he feels like a guy that caps out in the RB2 range for me. Caleb, I would guess, is a median outcome. Low end RB2, high end RB3 type. I think Warren will be pretty involved. Lee Holderman, can you, I have not heard this whatsoever. I heard Diggs might take till week 4 to get back on the field. I have not heard anything about him getting cut. That is news to me for sure. So I don't really know what to say about that, to be honest. If he got cut, I would say definitely, I mean, it hurts Drake May, but not enough to like really move him in Dynasty. It would hurt his season projection a little bit. Kyle Williams, I don't think it affects Kyle Williams either, because like he's either going to be good or he's not going to be good. And if he was going to be good, he would be able to earn targets even with Diggs on the field. So I don't know. This it feels like the biggest winner if Diggs gets cut is Kayshon Boutte, honestly. That feels like the biggest winner. Maybe go stash him. It's because of the boat thing. I don't know. I mean, why I mean, all I saw was him just being like a man whore on a boat. I didn't realize that was a crime. I didn't know there was drugs though. I had no idea about the drugs. I didn't really watch the video. Well, that would be kind of insane, to be honest with you. And if he's actually doing meth, I don't know. That's wild. Okay, so let's talk about this auction. Ross asked how many base firsts I'm including. I don't remember what I added up. I think it was like 150 base firsts was my rough number. And honestly, looking back on it, I think maybe it was a mistake to include some of the players that are like clearly $1 guys in that equation. Probably doesn't move things too much, but about 150. And then I don't know what it came out to per first. I just added up all the firsts and then divided it. I guess I would know. It would be somewhere, right? Yeah, it was about $80, similar to what you said, Austin. About $80 per first. Yeah, so it's been interesting to see how it's played out. So we've had, I need to actually throw in some of the last few bid winners. We did have Brian Thomas finally go for 201. And then we had, let's see here. Saquon went off the board for $123. I'm kind of surprised he didn't get a bid up higher. People were pretty disciplined on that one. And then if we go with Judkins, $75. Kind of surprised he didn't get bid up higher either. This room's had some pretty solid discipline, I think, with the bidding. These people are you know, solidly sharp, I think. Haven't seen much. Usually I feel like there's somebody who just destroys their team immediately with paying way too much, and people have been pretty reasonable so far. Austin, basically, the reason I was being so cautious is I guess I kind of wanted to see where the prices were going to settle in, and then I wanted to see the next run of players that got nominated. And basically my thought process was like, maybe all the next wave of players are also going to go for reasonable prices, or what they should, but I'm willing to forego some of the guys in the first run just to kind of see if I'm getting discounts later, and if not, then I'm willing to pay up for that next group of guys. So I'm hoping I can win some auctions here with some of the guys that are on the board, because there aren't really any there are no top 40 assets left to nominate. They're all on the board right now. So like I would like to win some of those. I hope I don't get pushed into overpaying for those guys because I missed out on the first run. But that's where I was at, and I was just hesitant to drop so much of my budget on one player, even though it's probably a good idea to get those top-heavy guys. I just kind of wanted to... I wanted to maintain my flexibility, just in case there was a ton of value that I could vacuum up later. And we'll see if that comes to fruition. By my math, about 36% of the money has already been spent, not including any of the active bids that are out there. So a lot of money is going to be gone when the players that are on the board are off the board. Like probably something like 65-70% of the money will be gone at least, maybe more. And there are still a lot of good players left. So I think eventually the tide's going to turn for the players that do have cash. The question is whether that leads to a bunch of mid players getting overpriced, in which case I'll just lose and regret it. Or if there are legitimate discounts on guys and I can build out like maybe a flatter team, you know, that has more depth to it. But I don't know. I think what Austin's doing makes sense. Let's see what other people have gotten done. Let's see. We've got Ross sitting here with Genty at 210. I think was a little bit rich. You ended up making a deal to kind of even that out, so it doesn't really matter. Pearsall 35 was a little bit over what I wanted to pay for him. Garrett Wilson 127, kind of the same thing. Mason Taylor for 6. I mean, whatever. Austin has Jamar. Well, he won Jamar and traded him. He has Bowers. Let's see. Who else is in the stream here? Jay, our host, Jay Mamana, got CJ Stroud for 150. That's a good price. Like I don't know, man. I'm a Stroud hater, but that was a good price, and I probably should have bid on him. And again, I just didn't do it. So I'm frustrated with myself a little bit for just being stubborn. Angus has spent almost 40% of his budget on Herbert and Mahomes, but he's got those two bookend quarterbacks. You know, that's solid. I think that's, and then Frielster has been in. He feels like he's been in on everybody. So far, he's only gotten Hurts and Jaden Daniels, which is about 50% of his budget. So him and Austin basically kind of did the same thing. And again, I think that can be a totally viable strategy. I'm just interested to see, you know, who's available and who I can. If I'm hoping I can scoop some discounts at some point. I think I will. Jay seems to think so. Discounts are coming. And again, Austin, I don't think there's anything wrong with what you paid for Jamar Chase. Like, I just had FOMO as far as the rest of the auction. I didn't think there was anything wrong with paying that price. I just don't have enough experience to be really confident in going one way or the other. Glad I got the name right. I did my best. Let's see. Austin, yeah. I mean, I said what I thought about your trade. So the trade, for anybody that wasn't there, Austin won Jamar Chase in auction. They basically decided he's going to rebuild this year. So he traded Jamar Chase to Ross along with 25 of his remaining auction dollars out of the $1,000 budget. So just to be clear, he traded Chase and 2.5% of his budget for Ashton Genty and then Ross's first and second round pick. Kind of an unusual trade for a rebuilder to send away Chase and get Genty, but obviously he's going to have him... he's going to have the ability to trade Genty later. He's getting the extra picks. I think it's a totally fine move. And then he's since picked up another first and second from somebody else. So pretty solid stuff, I think, from Austin. With the rebuild, he's going to have a big head start on the future as far as accumulating value. Would you have panicked with Bowers and Chase? I mean, I don't know if I would have panicked. I think I would have been kind of bummed out to like not have any money. And then I would have been sitting. I probably would have sat out a lot and kind of waited for an opportunity to jump back in and maybe steal a couple of mid-tier players at lower prices. But I can understand being a little bit nervous about it because it is start 11. You need to have a lot of players to fill out that kind of a lineup. Oh, I didn't catch that you had actually bought a first and then traded a first. So you actually traded that first and then you got back $25. So that's kind of nice for you because you basically only paid $40 for that first in a sense. Yeah, so anyway, the players that have gone off the board have been kind of all over the place. We've had a lot of the top tier guys: Jaden Daniels, Allen, Jackson, Jamar, Bowers, Hurts, Burrow, Mahomes, Thomas, Genty, McBride, Caleb, and Herbert are all gone. Every single player in the top 40 of the rankings has been nominated. Almost everybody in the top 50, with the exception of Jordan Love and JJ McCarthy. So people are not, waiting around on the stars. They're putting the stars out there. At the moment, I have the high bid on Travis Hunter at 142. I feel kind of whatever about it. It's a little bit higher than my math would indicate I should maybe bid, but I don't want to get out of this portion of the draft without any blue chip players. So it is what it is. That's what I'm bidding. Right now, I just got outbid on a few guys. I currently have high bid on Kyler at 111, Cam Ward at 81, Chris Olave 28, and Matt Stafford at $10 are my high bids at the moment. So it looks like I got outbid on all the receivers I was looking at. Nobody asked you, to be honest. Let's see here. Who did I get outbid on? Okay, I got outbid on Puka and Nico. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take back control on Puka. Oh, I got outbid on Tet as well. That's rude. Ross just keeps out. I feel like it's always Ross outbidding me. It's kind of crazy. Wait, why isn't it updating? Why is this not updating for me? I tried to bid on Tet. Oh, there we go. I did bid on Tet. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna get Tet, you're gonna have to pay. There you go. All right. So I just bid up McMillan up to 116. That's fine. Puka, I'm up. I'm on. Puka. Yeah, the other interesting thing is like having money tied up in so many different bids, and then you see players like ticking down on the clock that you want to bid on and you can't do it. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. I'm going to be kind of a dick and reset Trevor Lawrence, actually. The one thing, so I'm pretty cool, just I'll take what the draft gives me, but almost all of the quarterbacks are trending a little bit high. I'm not really too eager to get out of this draft without any quarterbacks, so I think that's just one spot where I'm going to have to take my medicine a little bit. There's just no good, it's just not a good idea, I don't think, to get out of this part of the draft without any star players, but I don't really know. I really don't know what's coming next. It's hard to anticipate. So I'm winging it. I'm not the expert here. Okay. So anyway, with the auction, for anybody that's curious, and I apologize that I've just been kind of staring at my screen and just rambling about this auction draft. Really cool format, something I'd like to do again. But it's being hosted on this website called League Tycoon. And basically, we have 12 managers in the draft. There are up to 36 active players being bid on at all times, and each one functions basically like an eBay auction where you can put in a max bid, and then it gets pushed until you get outbid by someone else, at which point it frees up your money to go and make more bids. And so these slow auctions are all timing out at different times. They go for 8 hours. If somebody bids after 4 hours, it'll bring the clock back up to 4 hours so that everybody has a chance to adjust to that. So it's been really interesting, really chaotic. We've had about 30 players or so get picked or get to be won in these auctions. So it's really fun. It's very different from a startup draft because you have total freedom to go out and get any player at any price and just kind of figure out how you want to value players, how you want to build your team, what positions you want. It's very fun. Unfortunately, I'm not that good at it. But I'm enjoying it so far. Hopefully I like what I have at the end. Let's get to some of these other topics for tonight because I don't necessarily want to be on forever. I've been looking at football related stuff all day, and I kind of need to like turn off my computer and read a book, I think. So last thing on auctions from Ross. If you've done an auction on Sleeper, which you liked better, 1 at a time versus 36? I've only done one slow auction. So I did one slow auction on Sleeper. It was terrible. We did one nomination at a time. It took absolutely forever. So I didn't love that. This is way cooler than that. I did do the fast auction on Sleeper, which I thought worked fine because you do one nomination at a time and it goes pretty quickly and it's pretty intuitive how to use it. So if I was doing a fast auction, I would just do it on Sleeper. But yeah, for the slow auction, this is way cooler than the slow auction I did before. I'm enjoying it. And I would definitely do one again. I might do one. I mean, I might force our host here to make us another one at some point. But for now, just gonna see how this one pans out. Other stuff for the stream tonight that were brought up. HM asked a question about how to trade up in a startup in order to acquire an additional elite player without giving up a future first. Yeah, so I mean, I think there's pretty much one good way to do this if you're not giving up a future first, which is to take some of your picks in the 3, 4, 5, 6 range and see what it would take to go up to back into the second or even the first, and then offer to move down into like the 8th or 9th or 10th round. And if you look at startup ADP on Dynasty Data Lab, I think that this works out pretty well. So, for example, in the 5th round, you're looking at guys like Adunze, Penix, Goff, Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy. Like, really the only players I like in that range at cost are McCarthy and Lawrence. There's nobody else that's terribly appealing. So I think it's pretty reasonable. If you want to take like your 4th and 5th rounders, let's say, for example, 4th and 5th round, and you want to get from the 406 and the 507 and try to get the 206 and the 206 would be your own pick. The 207 and the 807, and then you send your 2nd rounder to make that work. So you're moving up 2 rounds into the 4th, from the 4th to the 2nd, down 3 rounds from the 5th to the 8th, and then you're sending a 2nd as well. That would take you from Cam Ward and Christian McCaffrey to Caleb Williams, Luther Burden, Caleb Williams and Luther Burden, and then you send your 2nd. It's not terrible. I think it's fine to get one of those high-end players, and it doesn't have to be Caleb, right? Like Trey McBride, 206, Nico Collins going at 210, Drake May. If you're getting one of these players like May, Collins, McBride, Puka, Brian Thomas, I think it's worth it to then weaken a couple of spots and take those players going later in the 8th and 9th round. Guys like Judy, Kamara, Burden, Ayuk. Honestly, it does fall off a bit, where I feel like the 7th round is actually could be a nice spot to catch fallers. Players like Waddle, Egbuka, Fields, Pickens, pretty interesting in the 7th round. But yeah, that's the idea. It's just being willing to take a sacrifice, because it's a give and take, right? You have to be willing to lose something to get something. And that's kind of the area of the draft I think you can get the most value from without actually losing as much practically. So that's that one. The next one was Austin. You said something about a question you asked last week. Could you possibly just find that and throw it in the chat? If you do, then I will answer it. Clanger says a topic would be how to effectively navigate quarterback/tight end hordes in a heavy tight end premium league, and how to best extract the most value, when to trade these excess assets to get most value. Okay, so I don't know if you mean you already have a bunch of quarterbacks and tight ends, or the opposite. In Superflex, you definitely don't want to have too many quarterbacks. There's definitely a point of diminishing returns there. And I think really the best time to move those quarterbacks is in season. I feel like last year we had minimal quarterback injuries, but the year before that, we had so many guys that were out. And I think most of the time you're going to get some of those big quarterback injuries, or you're going to be missing players for large portions of the season, at which point, if you have an extra quarterback, that's really when you want to be sending that guy out. If you have an extra quarterback, or just trying to tier down. Tight ends are interesting in heavy tight end premium leagues. It feels like I have limited experience with anything more than a 0.5 point premium, but it seems like right now you're not really getting the trade value relative to what those guys can put in your lineup. It seems like they're a little bit underpriced in most cases, outside of some exceptions, like maybe a Sam Laporta or something where they have name value. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm really worried about having a ton of tight ends. It feels like you just have discounted flex options that you can play anytime you want in those type of leagues. But otherwise, I mean, the best time to extract value from a player that scores points is during the season when they're scoring points. And tight ends are a position that get banged up. People lose their guys for a week. So if you're talking about, end of bench guys, Hunter Henrys and Zach Ertz and Mike Gesicki's, you can get thirds for those players in season when there's injuries in a heavy tight end premium league. So that's what I would say about that. I'm trying to think if there's any certain strategy that I would implement as far as getting those players. I mean, really just going out to the people that have a surplus and just kind of trying to show them that you can help each other out and address one of their needs or offer them picks. See what happens. If they're just hoarding to hoard, you'll find someone else and they're going to be shooting themselves in the foot if they're trying to charge you an arm and a leg. I don't think that there's, with a 12-team league, like no one's going to have enough of monopoly really to try to enforce their kind of ridiculous prices. Yella did chime in with some stuff about how he hates Kyron Williams and how he's gross. He says, how do we know gross players aren't the secret to scoring points? Because I've played Dynasty longer than 1 year, and I have learned that most of the time, the players we think are gross do turn out to be gross or fraudulent eventually. Kyron Williams has survived a while. He is the cockroach of the running back position. My light just went out. Need to charge that. But eventually the floor is going to fall out on Kyron. And it's important to realize that Kyron did score points last year. He was not like a difference-making running back. I mean, he was fine. He was like 16 point something points per game, I think, which is good. And that's why he has value. But when you consider that he is a much less talent-based bet than more expensive running backs, it makes sense why he's discounted. Like, yes, can he score the same amount as Bucky Irving? Of course. Can he score the same amount as Breece Hall? Of course. He's also worse than those players, and it should be factored into his price that he is a worse player, that his team has invested in running backs in back-to-back seasons and is now talking about how they want to give him maybe a little bit less work or how they want to get Hunter involved. I want Jarquez Hunter to Bucky Irving him so badly because I have way more Jarquez Hunter. I think I have 1 Kyron share, and I have like 8 Hunter shares. So I want Jarquez Hunter to take his job. I think the most likely outcome is really just Kyron gets a couple less drives per game, and it kind of nerfs him back into that RB2 zone, and Jarquez Hunter doesn't really have that utility outside of an injury. But if an injury happens, he could totally take the job and run with it. You also said Bo Nix is gross. I mean, Bo Nix, sure, he can be gross, and Klanger called him the next fantasy Kirk Cousins that will win you money. I mean, that could be fine, but if he's the next Kirk Cousins, he's overpriced in Dynasty. Like, there's no reason for him to be a tier ahead, like a full tier ahead of the Love, Kyler, Lawrence, McCarthy group. That's the only issue I have with Nix. I think he's a fine quarterback. I think he's being overdrafted in seasonal leagues, like the BDGE video saying that Baker and Nix are like a full tier ahead in terms of point projections of like the Dak and May and Herbert and Purdy group is stupid to me because they're just functionally not that different. But yeah, in Dynasty, I just think he's a touch overpriced. Austin, I don't know what to tell you about this. I mean, the people are going to see Jamar Chase in a trade and they're going to pick that side. Like, they don't know all the context. They don't really probably care much about the nuances of it. They just see Jamar Chase. They want Jamar Chase. Blacked Mind, I don't think I've seen you active in the chat here before, so welcome to the stream. Worthy or Adunze? So I did move Worthy ahead of Adunze. To be honest with you, I don't have a ton of conviction in this. I do think Worthy's a little bit safer because of the situation that he's in. People will argue till the cows come home that Adunze is a much better wide receiver. That may be true. Could very well be true. What I know about Xavier Worthy is that he has a certain floor of manufactured touches that he's going to get. He plays in the Chiefs offense, which even though it's been less sexy the last couple years with Matt Nagy and Patrick Mahomes kind of turning into a check down machine, it does carry a certain amount of clout that he plays on the Chiefs. And there is going to be a certain floor of competence with that offense that we don't have from the Bears. Like, we like the idea of Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson in theory. We don't actually know for sure yet if this is a truly successful, well-oiled machine. We're not going to know that until the season. And so right now, looking at Worthy, I think that Adunze has the ultimately higher scoring ceiling because of his size and the way that he can win in certain routes. But ultimately, after a guy scores 8 point something points per game as a rookie, I'm not really thinking about their 99th percentile outcome. I'm thinking about like what can we do to keep this guy above water in the next season? And if Adunze can hit like 13, 14 points per game, he's going to rise in value, but that's not going to make him a league winner, and that's not going to put him a tier ahead of Xavier Worthy. Meanwhile, if we bring Worthy out, like if for some reason Rice gets a re-aggravated injury, or he's not the same coming back, or they change the roles up because Worthy's the fastest player in the NFL and suddenly he's getting more of that yards after catch stuff. If any of those things happen, it could be rocket ships for Worthy because he's coming off of a hot streak in the playoffs. He had 150 yards in the Super Bowl. If he comes out and has a couple of big games, people are going to be doing irresponsible things to acquire him because it's just going to be like shades of Tyreek Hill in their minds. That's what they're going to be seeing. So I think it's a psychological element. There is a floor element here with the manufactured touches, the Chiefs offense. And again, there is floor risk with Rome Odunze as much as people don't want to acknowledge it. He could be the third target on the team. He could be the fourth target on the team. I don't think it's likely, but DJ Moore was earning more targets than him last year. Burden and Loveland were brought in by this regime. And I've heard talk about how, Odunze was just this sacrificial receiver. That's why he didn't get targets. Well, if you look at the way that the roster's configured right now, if someone's going to be the sacrificial X receiver, who is it going to be if not Rome Odunze? They're not going to put DJ Moore at X. They're certainly not going to put Burden out there. Maybe they try to use Burden like Jameson Williams and make him run all the deep stuff. I kind of doubt it. That's not really his game. I mean, he had some success down the field in his sophomore season, but he's very much a get the ball in his hands yak type of guy, more so than Odunze. So even if Odunze is really good, he could still have a cap ceiling in the same way that we sort of are seeing with Marvin Harrison in his first year. I mean, it's too early to say that he can't hit a ceiling, but the part of the reason he struggled was not because he couldn't separate, but because of the role he was used in. He was not given a lot of schemed touches. And by my estimation, Odunze is the fourth best guy on the team to get a designed target. Loveland, maybe Loveland's more. I don't know. Loveland's not incredible after the catch, but he's just, as a tight end, he's going to work closer to the line of scrimmage. Burden and Moore are better after the catch. They're more likely the guys that Ben Johnson's going to try to get the ball in their hands quickly. So I don't know. All that to say, I think there's a little more risk with Odunze than some people want to acknowledge. It's not a wide gap between him and Worthy for me. I don't really care that much who you pick, but that is the explanation. First stream, loved your content for a while, just subscribe. Hey man, love to hear it. I appreciate you. Thank you for signing up. This is one of the perks, is you get to just hear me ramble on about random Dynasty topics every week. It's fun, it's different from the usual stuff where it's totally unscripted. I'm just talking, and sometimes I figure stuff out while I'm talking. Sometimes I just say I don't know and I throw my hands up, but it's usually a good time, especially when there are people in the chat making it fun. The question from Austin was, players who don't score over like 14 points per game don't matter that much. Where's that line in Dynasty? Who are good fades because they won't? So, okay. So here's the thing. There's a distinction between what this means in a seasonal versus Dynasty format. In a Dynasty format, you're going to see this long-term value for players, even if they're not providing difference-making production. You can sustain value because, because there's longevity there. There's, years remaining. This is like the Devonta Smith case. This is the Jordan Addison case, the Zay Flowers case. I have started to move more and more away from those players as they don't seem to be priced efficiently, where the amount that you have to give up to bank those extra years feels unnecessary to me. Where you could maybe separate those players into picks and then older veterans that are riskier, quote unquote riskier, like a Jacoby Myers and a first, right? Something like that for someone like Devonta Smith at their peak value is just safer across the board. You can bank a similar point projection, but if that player you're getting gets hurt or falls off a cliff, you still have the first as that store of value. And so I like that concept a little bit better than I like just buying the young players that are not difference makers. But at running back especially, this can be a problem where, for example, Jonathan Taylor, people are paying a lot for Jonathan Taylor in a lot of leagues. People are paying a lot for Kyron Williams in a lot of leagues, less so lately, but certainly in past years. And even though those running backs can score 16, 17, maybe even 18 points per game, I the running back position is so much more volatile and so much riskier. I don't really want to be paying up, you know, first round pick plus prices for running backs unless I think they have some real league winning potential. Somebody like Breece Hall, I think, still has that because of his pass catching. Bucky Irving, I think, has that, right? I think Devon Achane has that. He showed that. So I do want to be wary of those running backs. I'm trying to think of like a younger running back that scores in that zone. Like Chuba Hubbard, right? The market's been pretty responsible, I think, with Chuba Hubbard as a 25-year-old who probably isn't going to score anything higher than like 16 points per game at best. He's valued around that early second range. Like, that's reasonable to me. Someone like James Cook, though, the reason I'm not so into James Cook is just I think he doesn't have the scoring ceiling. He's going to regress on touchdowns, and as a running back, he's just inherently volatile in his value. He can get hurt, he can get replaced. He's going to be, 25. He's going to go into a second contract and become a little bit more expendable, a little bit riskier. So none of this is like a super clear answer to what you're saying. But I think the best fades in Dynasty right now when it comes to production are those wide receivers in that middling tier. Whoever's the most expensive out of the Addison, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Worthy, George Pickens group of wide receivers. Jacob Sanderson had a term for this that I haven't really heard him bring it up in a long time. It was called the wide receiver nesting doll theory. So if you think of those Russian nesting dolls where you open it up and another one comes out and another one comes out, the idea is that there's always this cluster of wide receivers that are basically just Spider-Man memes of each other, and whichever one just had the best season is going to be valued the highest. But realistically, they shouldn't be valued that differently. So whoever's getting up there in price is the one you want to fade the most, and whoever's getting to be the cheapest, like Jalen Waddle, for example, seems to go dirt cheap in a lot of leagues, just go trade for him, because really his range of outcomes isn't that different from a Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison or somebody who maybe is a little bit more of a hot commodity right now. And honestly, I think there's a little bit of like a quarterback nesting doll thing that's been going on, where you really have this humongous group of quarterbacks in Stroud, Nix, Lawrence, Kyler, Love, McCarthy, even going down to Ward and Purdy and Baker and Dak and Penix. Like, I think you could realistically project all these quarterbacks within like a few points per game of each other, and it could be the same idea where you just kind of churn these guys. Whoever's expensive, if Baker's getting expensive, okay, we're going to flip him for Dak and a plus. If Dak's getting expensive, which he's probably not going to again, we flip him for another quarterback. So just trying to be less picky, understanding where players are kind of closely grouped with similar ranges of outcomes, and just trying to take advantage of that. Lee says, how do you navigate a rebuild with older assets when your league is hyper vigilant about player age? I mean, if you're in a micro market where just those players are always going to be a little bit less valuable, then you're kind of stuck, with that in mind. That being said, I think people are a little bit more likely to open up their wallets in season when they feel like they're in the midst of a run and they suffer an injury, or there's a player that busts. I'd be shocked if you're holding somebody like a James Conner, like a Tony Pollard, and you can't just get a future second for them in the season. I think you're pretty likely to get a return for that. You also do want to make sure you're not being too greedy. Lee, I don't know what tier of membership you are, but if you have access to the rankings, you want to check and see, are you maybe being unrealistic about what you want in return, or are you giving them good offers and they're just not taking them? I think that's important too. But yeah, in season's your move, packaging multiple guys together to try to get picks, to get a future first, being willing to take picks multiple years out. Go for the 2027 picks instead of 2026 if that makes a difference for anybody. Yeah, I mean, those are some of my moves for sure. And maybe just being a little bit maybe just being a little bit more flexible about what you want in return. But again, you don't have to do that now. You do not, in May, you don't have to be settling for these assets. If people are being too stingy, just take a break, leave it alone for now, and circle back in a couple of months. That's right. I should have known that. I did know that. You're R. Lee. R. Lee something. Some numbers. Can't think of what the numbers are. 3. R. Lee 3. Yeah. I knew you were a league winner. All right. Let me see what else was in the chat, and we're gonna wrap this one up. Because like I said, I gotta go get my eyes off these screens. Realistically, I say that, and I will probably go sit down with a book, and then I'll just end up messaging in the stupid auction chat forever. Let's see. Yella posted the reception perception chart for Marvin Harrison. He had an 81% success rate versus zone, 76% versus press. I'm not going to like leak all of the reception perception data because obviously it's a good product and you should pay for it if you're interested. But I will go ahead and pull up the reception perception for Marv. Wait, where is it? Oh, here it is. It was from like multiple weeks ago. I thought it was new because he posted it today. So the only route that he had, this is public knowledge, the only route that he had red was the 9 route, which is kind of funny. He was also medium success on curls and flats. He was green on everything else, screens and slants and comebacks and outs and digs and posts and corners. So he was pretty successful. 80th percentile versus press, 75th percentile versus man, 72nd percentile versus zone. He was only deployed on the one, what was it, the right side of the field? I'm gonna double check that. So he was lined up as the X receiver. Let's see. Basically 80% of the time. And what you got to understand is that the best teams are moving their receivers around. Like someone like Neighbors, right? He benefited because he got to bump into the slot. He got some free releases off the line of scrimmage. The coach, this isn't something that typically becomes an issue with these great receivers, but from time to time, like bad coaching is going to kill you. He also has small hands, apparently. 21st percentile hand size. It's concerning. So Harmon is highlighting what we kind of all know to be true, which is just that he wasn't used on enough slants and flats and screens, plays where he gets the ball quickly. But he was very successful on his routes. And so the question is, where do we value the talent versus the deployment? Now, I will say, I think he's a pretty safe player to acquire, and I don't view him as a massive sell or anything. I think he's a safe player to acquire because he is good. Like, I very much believe he's good. He was a great prospect. He was, by all accounts, good as a rookie for what he was asked to do. The question is where the ceiling comes in and whether he's going to be deployed in a creative enough way to hit that ceiling. And it's not all a coaching issue. He was a very, very bad yards after catch player in college. That was his big flaw. So it does make some sense that he wouldn't necessarily be a huge yak threat in the NFL. Now, the only option that the Cardinals have that is a better yak threat would be Trey McBride. So, you know, he shouldn't be losing snaps to someone like Greg Dortch or Michael Wilson getting design touches. So hopefully we see him get some more of that stuff, get the ball in his hands quickly in year 2. And that's really where you'd have to see the big jump from him. But it is important to remember that he scored, 11 points per game as a rookie. So we can see a pretty big jump from him without necessarily seeing him enter into elite territory. Like 11.6 points per game. He could add 4 points per game to his his total and still really not get into that wide receiver one conversation. But his catch rate was low. Hopefully that comes up. His overall targets weren't that high. That can certainly come up. He did have 8 touchdowns last year. I wouldn't necessarily be banking on him to like blow that number away, but yeah, you want to see him get from like 116 targets up to 135, 140 with a true breakout. And then his catch rate last year was pretty terrible. 62 divided by 116. Let's see, 53%. Catch rate is pretty awful. I don't really put that on him. If we can get him to 60%, 65, let's say 62% on 140 targets, that's going to give him 87 receptions. Still not amazing, but he's getting, deep down the field on those receptions. So if you put him at like 14 yards per catch, that's like 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns on 80 catches. You're starting to talk about like a 275 point season. That's like 16 points per game. So I think it's totally possible that he could get up to like 15 and a half, 16 points per game. But it's hard for me to picture a lot more than that, I think, just this year. Like maybe he keeps improving in year 3. That's possible. We didn't see CeeDee Lamb hit a high ceiling until year 3. They actually have some similarities from a physical standpoint. So that's my talk on Harrison tonight. And the last thing I have here is from Nate. So we'll close on this. Nate said Jacob Sanderson was describing his teams as a lean operation. How would you best describe a lean operation going into this upcoming season? Best points, player options, best spots to have value and points tied up in, say lad, etc., an ideal amount of picks. So I'll just touch on this briefly, but what Jacob Sanderson was talking about in the Dynasty Points podcast was how he likes to let his teams be kind of shallow and top heavy at this time of the year. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Basically what he wants to do is consolidate as much value as possible into the star players in his lineup and then put the rest of his value in picks. And so he basically has like very little bench depth. He has as many stars as he can, and then he has picks. And the reason for this is because those star players are the most insulated to any kind of, externalities. They're going to score the most points early in the season, and you don't need depth early in the season when everybody is healthy and there are no bye weeks. So by doing all of that, you're basically wrapping your team in bubble wrap. You're saying everything I have is put into these safe pieces that are not going to get nuked early on. And then as you need to, it's always easy or, easy-ish to either trade picks for players or to tier down from stars if you have to then patch holes as you go. And I think that's really smart. It's something I've definitely done, but not really had a name for. But I like that idea of a lean operation, not necessarily stressing out about your depth pieces. Who's my QB3? Who's my 4th or 5th running back on the bench? Don't worry about that. Just accumulate value, consolidate when you can. It's easier to get bench depth later than it is to get star players. But as far as the ideal lean operation, like some of my absolute favorite guys would have to be like James Conner, Tony Pollard right now at running back. I like Jawan Jennings is probably my absolute favorite wide receiver to roster. But somebody like Jacoby Myers, Calvin Ridley, those guys are reasonable options as well. Even Cortland Sutton, I think, is a good one too. Jerry Jeudy as well is reasonable. Devontae Adams, I like those wide receivers. At tight end, you can go and get Jonnu. It's kind of weird right now with the trade stuff going around, but Jonnu and Njoku are both cheap. Ingram is cheap. I think those guys are totally fine in a tight end premium. And at quarterback, it's Stafford, it's Geno. So if you need to patch some holes cheap, those are the guys to do it. But otherwise, he's talking about not necessarily going out and getting those old players, but really consolidating into stars and getting picks. So don't be afraid to trade your first wide receiver off the bench for a future pick. Don't be afraid to trade those extra running backs, package them up, and try to get a future first or something. You can always undo that later. And so the last piece of the puzzle, I guess, would be like, what, star high value players would you want to be consolidating around? I mean, that's really your top end startup guys. I'd say just based on vibes, I think Lad is still a little bit too cheap. I think Travis Hunter's still too cheap in the majority of leagues. Trey McBride, Puka Nakua, those are guys I like. You know, Drake May. Just depends where you're trying to upgrade, but I think that's really the range you're looking at, where you're looking to consolidate value around a star player. So hopefully that theory makes some sense. Chat has died down here a little bit. If you guys are still here, still watching, appreciate you sticking with me here. I am going to wrap this up. I'm very tired, but that was a good talk. Good questions, good topics. I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Remains to be seen whether the video will be out tomorrow. It might be pushed to Monday. We'll see. But I'm going to have a wide receiver rankings video out sometime soon. I was thinking about talking about some of my guys I'm kind of quibbling about, but maybe I'll bring it up in the members chat instead because I didn't really have time. But yeah, I'll be having a video out soon enough. I'm hopefully going to be collabing with Ron Stewart for a video on the channel sometime soon. We haven't picked a date yet, but it is happening. So that'll be fun. I'll keep you guys posted about that. And of course, I will be posting about my auction and probably raging and crashing out about it in the chat. So I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night. Austin, thanks for hanging out. I'll see you guys later.